Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And guys, let me quickly mention that I really appreciate your time. Really, thank you so much that you watched my videos. I really appreciate that. In my previous video, I quickly mentioned about my anxiety and some of that stuff. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna ask for support or something. No, I just mentioned that in order to you understand a little bit about me, because maybe you're interested in it or maybe not. I mean, I'm not gonna mention it again. I just try to introduce a little bit more information about me. So, can you guess what are we gonna do right now? I'm gonna declare that we are gonna build a road. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is not in order to kind of annoy you, but in order to eventually finish amazing project which I figure out or created. So basically, I mean, now I'm gonna extend this road a little bit, and eventually we will continue. But the reason for that is to create huge circle on my map and connect my road with another road. So guys, don't get me wrong. I mean, now we're gonna extend it a little bit, and then eventually we will connect it someday, and I mean, it's worth right now to do that. Yeah, we're gonna build just a little bit more. And thank you for your attention. Enjoy. I wanna show you something. Basically, the main reason why I decided to extend the road. And again, I mean, I'm not gonna do that all at once, but eventually.
I would have assumed, now I know I'm completely wrong, but I assumed that I was so carbohydrate starved for so long that my insulin.
This place is here. Look at that, guys. I have no words. Really. I really astonished or amazed by the amount of beautiful and amazing places which I have in my world, really. And unfortunately, this place is situated quite far from my house, but not so far. I mean, it's a little bit difficult to achieve it because there's lots of mountains and rivers and forests. But I mean that we know what our goal is, and eventually we will reach it. Just an amazing.
Or perhaps it's elevating.
I'm just, as always, listening to Andrew Huberman. This one is episode 96 with guest Dr. Uh, Ryan Norton. Yeah.
So my suspicion is that it probably is working via appetite regulation. So that, I mean, if we look at the most effective obesity. Well, I guess I'm interrupting, but hopefully with a purpose. There's this really interesting study, and it's in mice, admittedly, but published in a neuroscience journal recently. And basically the takeaway is that, like so many things in neuroscience, the GLP-1 works in two parallel pathways. In the brain, it seems to impact neurons in the hypothalamus that control satiety. So exactly what you're saying. And in the gut, it seems to create an activation of the mechanosensors in the gut. Mm-hmm. So the perception is that the gut is full. Metabolism is mostly like liver based, and then there's metabolism between these pathways, and that's when we get into mechanisms. One of the things I love mechanisms, but one of the things I tell people is keep in mind that when you're dealing with an outcome, right? So like when I say outcome based, we're talking about physical outcomes like weight loss, fat loss, changes in blood markers, whatever. Though that is the summation of thousands of different mechanisms. So, sure, sometimes you can affect a mechanistic pathway and you get just kind of straight down the line outcome, but not always. Whenever you make a treatment or kind of anything into the system, it's like throwing a pebble in a lake, right? It creates ripples, and we don't always know what those are going to be, right? And that's why we've seen certain drugs. Well, it works on this pathway, and then they list off all the side effects, and you go, well, how would it create that many side effects? It's because nothing, for the most part, they don't just work in one place. There's a multitude of places it works. And to your point about semaglutide and the effects on mechanosensors, it's probably why a lot of people report actually kind of like low-grade nausea when they're using semaglutide because of that. Because if you're, that feeling is usually not like a real comfortable feeling, but it will get you to not eat. So I think there's absolutely likely a connection, but we haven't fully elucidated how that works. And when you think about how complicated the gut is, I think I heard something like there's more cells in our microbiome by far than there are in our body. So we're actually more, in terms of a cell per cell level, we're actually more bacteria than we are eukaryote. Right? There's Justin Sonnenberg, who's one of the world experts on microbiome. He's in the lab upstairs from mine at Stanford. And he has this idea, it's just an idea, that because we are indeed more bacteria than we are cells, the question is who's the host and who's the passenger? Like maybe we are just, maybe they're exploiting us to take them around and interact, because they interact and grow on one another. And so this idea, this freaks people out. Lex Friedman will love this. That maybe human beings are just actually the vehicles for the microbiome and not the other way around. Anyway, kind of a scary thought.
Do you do anything specifically to support your gut microbiome? Are you a probiotic guy or a fermented foods guy or a fiber guy?
So, again, I'm going to kind of go straight down the line from what I've heard from Suzanne and other experts. So, if you want to improve gut health, one of the biggest levers, the three biggest levers you can pull is not eating too many calories, exercising. There is a connection between exercise and the gut, and fiber. So, it is, of the things we know, dietary fiber seems to positively impact the gut because it is what's called a prebiotic. So your gut microbiota can take, especially soluble fiber, although there's actually some evidence, at least in mice, that it might be able to use some insoluble fiber as well. I think Suzanne was doing a study looking at hemicellulose and actually seeing that some specific forms of microbiota flourish with hemicellulose, suggesting that they may actually be getting some kind of fuel out of it, which is really interesting. Again, in mice, so just huge caveat. So your gut microbiome can produce these short chain fatty acids from by fermenting this soluble fiber, and there's quite a bit of evidence that these volatile fatty acids, which can be then actually reabsorbed in through the liver, that they have some positive effects. Like, for example, butyrate, when they've done butyrate supplementation, they've actually seen positive effects on insulin sensitivity. So what we seem to understand is that more diversity seems to be better. Fiber seems to be positive. Prebiotics seem to work much better than probiotics.
Supplemented prebiotics.
Yes. Yeah. So the problem with most of the probiotics is they're typically not concentrated enough to actually colonize. And even if you do colonize, what happens is, like, let's say you colonize some microbiota that you didn't really have much of. If you're not fueling it with the appropriate fiber, it's not going to stay anyway because it's essentially going to starve. So the research seems to really clearly suggest that eating enough fiber, which is, again, a prebiotic, that is a better way to get a healthier gut per se than probiotic.
What fiber sources do you use? And I think I realize there's a huge array of choices out there, but people will want to have some ideas as to how they could craft X.
And basically what it showed was that for every 10-gram increase in fiber, there was a 10% reduction in the risk of mortality. And that extended specifically also to cardiovascular disease and cancer. So one of the things I'll tell people when they get really into, whether it's intermittent fasting or, all these other things, that's great. Are you eating over 50, 60 grams of fiber a day?
And I just to conceptualize 50 to 60 grams. So if I were to eat let's just say a quarter plate of broccoli, and the broccoli isn't stacked to the ceiling. The broccoli is just reasonably stacked on there. Approximately how many grams of fiber is that? If it's like 2 cups of broccoli, there's a lot.
Yeah, so if you're 200 grams of broccoli per se would probably be 5-6 grams of fiber.
And I need to get how much per day?
Well,
ideally,
I would say typically what the recommended dose is 15 grams per 1,000 calories intake. Because if you're eating, low calories, it's difficult to get enough fiber in. But based on, and again, these are cohort studies, but you can't do 20-year-long randomized human control trials, unfortunately. There doesn't really appear to be a top end, at least for the benefits of fiber. It probably boils down to how much you can tolerate without feeling uncomfortable, right? Because if you're eating a ton of fiber, at some point it's not going to be very comfortable.
Yeah, exercise becomes uncomfortable or hazardous. Yeah.
And actually, I'm kind of touching on that because I think it is important. A lot of people have kind of in the carnivore community said, well, you don't need fiber, you poop just fine without it. And I'll always say, well, pooping is the last reason to have fiber. Yes, it does help. It does seem to make elimination easier. You can do it more frequently, adds bulk to stool. But that's not why you should eat fiber. Why you should eat fiber is because of the effects on mortality. And, some of the pushback will be, well, this is healthy user bias. And what I'll say is...
Meaning healthy people do this and therefore it's working.
Healthy people eat more